Or anyone else can add. Zain or let's see, Harun, could you help him out? The question is, or let's see, Aryan said, yeah, Aryan, I'll email the slides, inshallah. And right now we're doing review anyway, so if you remember anything, you can just write it down now. Um, okay, anyone can answer now. The question is, how does fasting help you become mindful of Allah? And we discussed this last week. If typing is too difficult, you guys can speak in the mic. Okay, I see Hudayfa just joined. Um, so for those of you who are just joining, we're just reviewing from last week. So I asked the class a question. Well, the first question was that how does, oh, sorry, what is the main purpose of fasting? And the answer was to remember Allah or to be mindful of Allah. And then the second question, the follow-up question is, how does fasting help you become mindful of Allah? So those who joined late, you guys can also answer, Hudayfa. Okay. Um, it's okay to forget. So let's just review together. The way to be mindful of Allah due to fasting is because when you're fasting, um, you can hide from anyone and go and eat and drink, right? But even though you're hidden from everyone, you know that Allah is watching you. So then, because Allah is watching you, you will not break your fast. That's how you become more mindful of Allah. So then you apply that to other things. You won't lie, even though everyone else will think you're saying the truth, but Allah knows that you're lying, so you won't lie, or you won't steal. No one knows that you stole, or no one knows that you can easily just pick up something of someone else's and no one will know. But Allah is watching, so then you don't do that. So that's how fasting is connected to being mindful of Allah. Okay. These are just explanations of the Quranic ayah. The hadith we talked about yesterday, last week. When Ramadan begins, the gates of paradise are open, the gates of hell are locked, and the devils are chained. Right? So, just a quick review. This is just like a side point. Anyway, if devils are chained, does that mean that no one does anything bad? What was our answer last week? Everyone can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay. So maybe we just forgot. That's okay. So the answer was that people have their own, temptations and desires apart from just shaitan whispering, right? And also it's because of your old habits. It's hard to break old habits. Ramadan kind of it gives you a big boost of positive intentions and just positive feelings all around, connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, connection with the masjid, etc. So it helps you to break bad habits and start good ones. But if you have a bad habit outside Ramadan, that'll continue in Ramadan. It won't just immediately stop, right? So even if shaitan is not whispering to us, okay? And this hadith, I don't think we did this hadith last week. So whoever fasts during Ramadan with faith and seeking reward from Allah will have their past sins forgiven. Whoever prays during the night in Ramadan with faith and seeking their reward from Allah will have their past sins forgiven. And let's just say whoever, and whoever passes Laylatul Qadr, being the night of power, the night of decree, whoever passes Laylatul Qadr in prayer with faith and seeking their reward from Allah will have their past sins forgiven. So the other benefit of Ramadan, so we said one benefit, the main benefit is you become mindful of Allah. The second benefit is that you become thankful, right? And then this other benefit is that your sins are forgiven. Okay. So let's start about we were just kind of talking about Ramadan and about its like spiritual benefits and why we fast and talking about different ayahs and different hadiths about Ramadan. But now let's talk about the fiqh of Ramadan. So fiqh means the rules of Ramadan. So and this is good to review every year, but it's also good to for some of you it might be review, some of you it might be your first time. Because we know in Ramadan, the main thing is just to not eat and drink from Fajr to Maghrib, right? That's the main thing. It's not that complicated. But sometimes there's rules regarding like what breaks your fast, what doesn't break your fast. When when am I excused from fasting? Or who is excused from fasting? Or what if I want to fast outside of Ramadan? What are the different rules for that? Okay, so we're going to talk about that. So before we start, um, all of you have joined this class for Fiqh of Ramadan, or just not just the fiqh, but like this class. You're coming into this class knowing that it's going to be about Ramadan. I want all of you to type in the chat about one thing that you'd like to learn about Ramadan or fasting. This one question maybe you had in your mind before coming to class. What do you want to gain in this class in terms of Ramadan? So I want everyone to take 1 minute and just write a response. Yes, Ayan, that's a good idea. I'll type the question in the chat. And to answer this Aryan's question, what is Ashura? Does anyone remember what Ashura is? Ashura is Ashura is a day, is the 10th day of the month of Muharram, and it's sunnah to fast on that day. Okay, I have one answer from Hassan. Okay, it's been about 2 minutes. Don't want to spend too much time on this. Okay, so rules of fasting, what happens when we break our fast, how many bad deeds do we get? I think all of you probably have similar goals with this class, learning about the rules of fasting, right? So maybe I was looking for a little more specific, but and I answer, I don't have an idea. So that's fine too. You're gonna inshallah learn about all the different rules of fasting which you'll need to know. For example, what happens if you accidentally swallow water, or what happens if someone just doesn't want to fast, right? So we're gonna learn about all that. Before I start talking about the actual material, I'd like to just share this book. If you can all see my screen, this book is called Ascent to Felicity, and you can see it's a manual on Islamic creed and Hanafi jurisprudence. So basically, it's a book about Islamic rulings. So fasting, prayer, zakat, hajj, um, wudu and tahara, and even has like some things about Islamic belief. And I've introduced this book to a lot of the students before. So if you guys want to get this book for this class, it will really help. It's not required because until you learn everything through the lectures. But if you want to get this book just to have all the notes organized, that'll be really helpful. Um, sometimes it's a little difficult to understand, and I really recommend that you read it with a teacher. For example, if you had this right now while you're learning the material in class, you'll be able to understand it better. But once you go through this course, until 3 or 4 more weeks, then you go back and review this, it'll be really clear. So that's just a recommendation. It's not required, but if you want to get it, I would highly recommend getting this book. Ascent to Felicity by Faraz A. Khan. You could probably find it on Amazon or other sources. Okay, back to the slide. So this is where you guys should start taking notes. Get a notebook or, and I'll send the slides, but the slides are just like brief main points. A lot of the details you guys are gonna need to write down or remember, and we'll review everything each in the beginning of each class. Before you come to next week's class, everything that we learned today, review it so that you'll be able to answer the questions. Because fasting is something we only have to do once a year, so we tend to forget the rules, right? So let's talk about the types of fasts. So number one is fard. Fard means it's obligatory, meaning that you have to do it. There's no choice. Someone who doesn't do something that is fard is sinful. Okay? So what is a type of fast that is fard? Okay, Aryan said Ramadan fasts. Are there any other types of fasts that are fard? No, there isn't. So it's Ramadan fasts and then also making up Ramadan fast. So anything outside of Ramadan is not fard, right? So Ramadan is um the month where if someone just for no excuse or no reason chooses not to fast, that will be considered sinful, right? And we talked about last week like the reason we fast. And also Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's the one telling us to fast. And if we just, say, no, I don't really care, I don't really have interest, Islam is just not really that important, then, that's when a person will fall under sin. If someone has a valid excuse, they're sick or they're traveling, etc., which will go through all the excuses, then they won't be sinful, but they'll still have to make it up. Okay? So very good. The only fard fast is Ramadan. And there's all these terms, if you guys see, like one, two, three, four, they're in Arabic. These are Arabic words. And I want you to understand what the Arabic means. So that way, if you ever hear the word like fard or mustahab, sunnah, you'll know what it's referring to, right? So first, fard means you have to do it. Number two, wajib. Wajib means, wajib also means that you have to do it, but it's less than fard. Okay, it's less than fard. Wajib is also sinful if someone doesn't do it. The only difference between fard and wajib, and I want you guys to remember this, the main difference between fard and wajib is that someone who doesn't believe in a fard, that will mean that they're not a Muslim, right? If someone believes that, Muslims do not have to pray, or they believe that I don't have to pray, or believes that, Muslims or, the individual does not have to fast in Ramadan. They say that this is not obligatory, then that person is not a Muslim, right? Because as Muslims, we all believe that prayer is fard 5 times a day. We all believe that, Ramadan, fasting the month of Ramadan is fard, right? So it's about belief, right? So if someone, but for example, wajib, right? Wajib is a little lower than fard. If someone doesn't believe in wajib, then they'll still be a Muslim, but it's still sinful to not do it, and it's still sinful to not believe that it's wajib, but they'll still be Muslim. Okay. Um, for example, prayers. Let's try to relate this to prayers. There are 5 fard prayers, right? Fajr, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha. There is a few wajib prayers. Can anyone list any wajib prayers? Maybe you guys have heard wajib something prayer. Okay, so Aryan said witr. Very good. Witr is wajib. So it's not, we know there's 5 daily prayers, right? And is witr is not part of the 5 days. It is kind of connected to Isha, right? You pray witr right after Isha, but witr is technically its own prayer. So it's not fard, but it is wajib. Means someone who misses witr, that is sinful. It's not optional. You can't just pray Isha and skip witr. Okay? But if someone says that, I don't believe witr is wajib, I don't believe witr is something that I have to pray or something that Muslims have to pray, they'll still be a Muslim, right? They're just, they need some guidance, they need to learn better. But fard, if someone says, no, Muslims don't have to pray, they don't have to pray 5 times a day, then that person is not a Muslim. Number three, okay, sorry, let me explain wajib or give an example. Example of wajib fasts is sorry, this makeup of non-Ramadan fast, right? So let's just ignore this for a second. Ignore the makeup part. Let's talk about vows. A vow means that you promise to do something. It's even more than a promise. A vow is like uh, in Islam, a vow is that someone says, Wallahi, I will do this. Wallahi, I will fast on, for example, let me give you a practical example. So what's today? Today is Saturday, February 26th. Let's say one of us has like a midterm next week or the week after or next month, I think midterms, all right? Let's just say, for example, we have midterm on Monday and someone, makes so much dua, oh Allah, please give me an A, please make the test easy, whatever. And they say, oh Allah, if I get an A, then I will fast on Tuesday. If I get an A on Monday's test, then I'm going to fast on Tuesday. And they say, Wallahi, I will fast on Tuesday if I get an A. Then that is what's considered a vow, right? That means they're basically promising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that if something happens, then they're going to fast on Tuesday. So then if they, let's say they get a good score on their test, they get an A plus, then now they're gonna have to fast the next day, right? Because they made that vow, they made that promise. So that's a wajib fast. It's not fard because only Ramadan fasts are fard, but since they promised to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by saying, Wallahi, I'll fast, then they have to fast. It will be sinful for them not to fast. So that's example of a wajib, right? Is everyone following along? Anything confusing about fard or wajib or about the vow? Okay, very good. Because please, this is, very important part of our religion, and it's coming up in basically a month. Next month we're going to be fasting. Next month is going to be Ramadan. So any slight confusion you guys have, don't feel shy. This is a very small class, only 10, 11 people. It's not a big class, and you don't even have to show your face. So even if you ask a question, you don't have to feel embarrassed because no one really sees anyone else, right? So don't be shy and don't be hesitant. Okay. Hassan's asking a question. Is it the same for Nuffle too? Like vow for Nuffle? Nuffle prayer. Yes, very good. And I didn't mention Nuffle yet, but basically, I'll get to it when I start Nuffle. When I mention Nuffle, then I'll answer your question. Okay, very good. Okay, let's talk about Sunnah. Number 3, Sunnah fasts. So obviously, again, this is outside of Ramadan, and I mentioned a Sunnah fast earlier. Does anyone remember any Sunnah fasts? Fasting on Mondays, 10th of Muharram. So yeah, they're both considered Sunnah fasts. So fasting on Monday will it is Sunnah, like the Prophet ﷺ did it, but in terms of fiqh, it might be under the fourth category, which is Mustahab, which I'll get to. But for example, 10th of Muharram is Ashura, right? Ashura is 10th of Muharram. That's a Sunnah fast. Okay? Sunnah fast is just you don't have to do it, but if you do it, you get more reward, right? And it's good to do these fasts, try to do them every year. They're usually only just once a year. And number 4 is Mustahab. So Mustahab is lower than Sunnah. Mustahab means that you get reward for it. It's better to do it, but there's nothing wrong with if you don't do it. Nothing wrong with if you don't do it. So, for example, since most of us may know a little more about the rules about prayer, right? Since prayer is something we do daily, we're more familiar with it. Um, we can. I like to relate like rules of fasting with the rules of prayer. So for prayer, right, the fard prayer is 5 times a day. Wajib prayer is Salatul Witr, and the Eid prayers, they're wajib for men. The Sunnah prayers, like for example, 2 rakat before Fajr, 2 rakat after Zuhr, etc. Mustahab prayers, there's Mustahab prayers which are like, um, they're also Sunnah technically. Sunnah means that the Prophet ﷺ did it. That's what Sunnah means. Sunnah means something that the Prophet ﷺ did. Now there's you could say two levels of Sunnah. One is which we just call Sunnah, which is number 3, and that means it's more emphasized. It's something the Prophet ﷺ gave more importance to. And then number 4 is Mustahab. Number 4 is Mustahab, which also is something that the Prophet ﷺ did. Sometimes it's something the Prophet ﷺ did, but it's not as strong as number 3. Right? It's not as strong as the regular Sunnah we know. So in terms of prayer, um, if you guys have heard of the prayer Ishraq, the Ishraq prayer that you pray after sunrise, uh, basically after Fajr, you wait until the sun rises. The sun rises, and then you have to wait at least maybe like 15 minutes, 20 minutes until the sun completely rises, meaning the disk of the sun is completely above the horizon. Then there's a mustahab prayer called Ishraq, where you just pray 2 or 4 rakats, and that's different than the 5 daily prayers, and that's different than the Sunnah. It's its own prayer, but it's something that sometimes the Prophet ﷺ did and the Sahaba did, right? So there's benefit to it and there's a reward for it. This other example I gave here, 13th to 15th of every month, meaning 13th, 14th, 15th, these 3 days of every month. There's um, there's a benefit in doing those. And like Maud said, that fasting on Mondays and Thursdays, there's also um, there's an importance to them. Okay, very good. Let's do the next. So in total, there's 7 types of fasts, right? Um, Number 5, Nuffle. Nuffle just means it's optional. It's completely optional. If you do it, then it's good. If you don't do it, then there's nothing wrong with not doing it. For example, let's say you pray Maghrib, right? Pray 3 rakat of Fard, pray 2 rakat Sunnah, and then if you want to pray 2 rakat after that, that's up to you. It's good if you do it. If you don't want to do it, then there's nothing wrong. No one can say that you're doing something wrong. Okay, if you don't pray. So the Nuffle fasts are any other fast besides Fard, Wajib, Sunnah, Mustahab, and besides the Makruh fasts, besides number 6 and number 7. Any other day is a Nuffle fast. For example, if we want to fast tomorrow, we just want to fast tomorrow, then you can fast. It's Nuffle. You're allowed to fast. But if you want to fast on, let's say, um, the 10th of Dhul Hijjah, what is the 10th of Dhul Hijjah? That's Eid. It's Eid al-Adha. You can't fast on Eid al-Adha, right? And um to answer Hassan's question, is it the same for Nuffle too? Like if you vow to do a Nuffle prayer, yes, it's the same. So Nuffle prayer is optional, but if you make a vow to pray a Nuffle prayer, then that becomes wajib. Okay? Does everyone understand that? If you make a vow to pray a Nuffle prayer, then that becomes wajib. Then you have to do it. Okay? So for example, for a prayer, let's say the same example. Someone, has a test on Monday, they have a midterm on Monday, and they say, "Oh Allah, please, give me an A plus and make the test easy, whatever." And or maybe someone just says, "Oh Allah, make there be a snow day, or make the teacher forget to bring the exam, whatever." People make all kinds of du'as. And then that thing happens on Monday, right? And they had said, "Then I'll pray." Then they say, "Wallahi, I will pray 2 rakats." Or they say that I make a vow that I will pray 2 rakats, right? Then if that happens, then they're gonna have to pray. They're gonna have to pray the 2 rakats. It'll become wajib upon them because they made that vow. Now, if they don't do it, they'll be sinful. But before, if they didn't make the vow, then they can just do it. That's why it's kind of a better idea to just in your mind make an intention that if this thing happens, then I'm gonna pray 2 rakats. Don't make a vow because it just makes it more difficult for you. Okay, so same thing with fasting. Subhan asked the question, can you explain again a Nuffle fasting? Yes. So a Nuffle fast is basically any fast except all the other categories. You see all the categories 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Nuffle fast is any fast that is not fard or wajib or sunnah or mustahab and not makruh. So it just means it's a completely optional fast on any random day of the year. That's to summarize it, it's just any optional fast on any other random day of the year. That's a Nuffle fast. It's like if I just want to get up and pray 2 rakats, I'm not praying Fajr, I'm not praying. It's not any. It's just 2 rakats. You're allowed to do that. You can go and pray an extra 2 rakats. Does that answer your question, Subhan?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Number 6. So far we all understand what these words mean, these Arabic words, fard, wajib, sunnah, mustahab, nuffle, right? Just to review, fard means obligatory, meaning you have to do it. Wajib also is the same thing, you have to do it, but it's just a lower level than fard. Sunnah means something that the Prophet ﷺ did. Mustahab, it's something that's good to do, or it's also something that the Prophet ﷺ did sometimes. Number five, Nuffle, it's optional. Now we get to makruh. So we can see that there's two types of makruh. Right? Number six is makruh tanzihi. Number seven is makruh tahrimi. Makruh literally means that it's disliked. It's disliked to fast. So, we may think that, how can it be disliked to fast? You know, for example, like praying and fasting are good things. How can it be disliked to pray and fast? It's disliked to pray and fast on specific days or specific times, right? For example, let's talk about prayer. It is makruh to pray any Nuffle prayer after Asr. So once you've prayed Asr, we notice that there's no Sunnah after Asr, right? Every other prayer has a Sunnah after it, except Fajr. Fajr also doesn't have Sunnah after it. So when you pray the 4 rakat of Asr, you should not pray anything else until Maghrib, right? So that's an example for prayer. Now, example of fasting is, like I said here, um, first let me explain what is the difference between number six and number seven. Makruh tanzihi means it's slightly disliked. It's slightly disliked. I mean, if you do it, you won't really get a sin, but it's just better to avoid it, right? So example of that is fasting only on Saturday or only on Friday, meaning that I didn't fast Friday, I fasted Saturday, and then I didn't fast Sunday. You're just singling out fasting on Saturday. That is makruh, it's disliked, it's something that should be avoided because Saturday is the you could say the religious day of the week for Jews. So in order to differentiate between Muslims and Jews, we don't want to, give importance to a day that's special for a different religion. Or for example, Sunday, right? Sunday is, we all know that that's the day that the Christians go to church and that's their special day. Just like Friday is our Jummah, Friday is our, religious day of the week. So we don't want to fast just on Sunday because that's kind of showing that like we're giving some importance to Sunday, although that's for Christians. And then I also said Friday. Why do you think that it would be disliked to fast on Friday? What do you guys think? Type in the chat or you guys can speak up in the mic. Okay, so Aryan said it's Jummah. So just elaborate on that. Why would it be makruh to fast on Jummah? What's special about Jummah? Day of celebration. Yes, very good. So Jummah is a day of celebration. Um, just like our, annual days of celebration, our yearly days of celebration, which is Eid, right? We have two Eids. The Eid means it's a day of celebration, right? And what do you do when you celebrate? You have food, right? So that's why, Eid after Ramadan, you don't fast. You're done fasting, now you're eating, now you're enjoying. So same thing for Friday. Friday is a special day. Friday is another, you could say, like a nickname of Friday is the Eid of the week. Just like we have the Eid of the year, which is Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha, there's the Eid of the week, which is Friday. So because it's a day of, kind of like a day of celebration, like we have the idea of weekend. The weekend is a day when you like relax and just kind of enjoy instead of being busy throughout the rest of the week. Friday is also a day that, You should you should even in America, Friday is like the end of the week. Everyone's like, thank God it's Friday. So because of that, you should not fast on Friday, just on Friday. If let's say you want to fast Thursday and Friday together, or you want to fast Friday and Saturday together, you can do that. You can do that because you're not singling out. The idea for makruh tanzihi is that you're singling out just Friday. Why are you fasting just on Friday? That's a day of celebration. But if you're fasting Saturday and Friday, then it's like, okay, you're just doing Nuffle fasts continuously. So that's okay. And number 7, makruh tahrimi. Makruh tahrimi, you see this word tahrimi? It comes from the same root as the word haram. And haram means it's prohibited, it's sinful. So makruh tahrimi means it's prohibitively disliked. Meaning that if someone does something that's makruh tahrimi, they will be sinful. Okay? So makruh tanzihi would be like is disliked, like I said, fasting here. In terms of, for example, let me give you another example. You have food, right? You have halal food, you have haram food, you have makruh tanzihi food, and you have makruh tahrimi food. There's no food that's wajib, right? There's no food that's fard. You don't have to eat anything, right? There are foods that are sunnah, meaning that the Prophet ﷺ did it, and if you eat or drink those foods with the intention of following the sunnah, and because the Prophet ﷺ liked that or made dua for that food, then you'll get reward. For example, milk. The Prophet ﷺ, he used to make a dua when drinking milk, and he enjoyed milk. Honey and dates. That's why in fact when we fast, we always break our fast, or we try to, with dates. You don't have to, but it's sunnah to, and you get more reward. So you have to eat anyway, right? You have to break your fast anyway. Why not just do it with a date? So that way you get reward of following the sunnah. So there are sunnah foods. There's no nuffle foods. I mean, everything that's halal is basically like it's optional to eat or not. Um, but there are makruh and zihi, meaning there are foods that are disliked to eat. In the Hanafi madhab, the food that is disliked to eat, one example is shrimp. Like it's not haram, it's not sinful, but it's just because of like there's different hadith about fish and seafood, and because shrimp are not technically fish, that's why because all fish are halal, but shrimp, they're not technically fish, but they are seafood, so it's like, okay, you can eat it. It's better to avoid it, but you can eat it. So that's example in food. Makruh tahrimi, right? Makruh tahrimi in terms of fasting. What are I think Aryan or Harun. I think Harun, you were here last year too. Um, what example of makruh tahrimi fast? Basically, in other words, what's an example of a day which you'll get sin for fasting, which you're not allowed to fast on that day? The Aryan said Eid. Very good. On Eid, you're not even allowed to fast. Someone may think that fasting is good, you get more reward. But on Eid, you're not allowed to fast. If someone fasts on Eid thinking that, oh, it's a day of celebration, I'm being so grateful to Allah, let me fast, for His sake, then, the intention is right, but the action is wrong. So they'll get sinful. So, um, and Eid also is that it's a day of celebration. It's a day of eating. Literally, it's a day of eating. So don't fast. Okay? So that's the one that's makruh tahrimi, means if someone fasts on Eid, they'll be sinful. So that's the only days that's makruh tahrimi, the days of Eid. And there's technically 3 days of Eid al-Adha. Um, so we don't fast on the 10th, 13th, 14th. Oh, sorry, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th of Dhul Hijjah. And we don't fast on Eid al-Fitr after Ramadan. Okay? So, please, I'll give like a minute for you guys to write this in your notes. and to ask any questions, because we're going to review that next week. I will ask all of you. Maybe I'll ask like one question to each student regarding this, just to review. Okay. Any questions about this one? Okay. So that's the type of fast. But the main fast that most of us are going to fast is Ramadan. That's the main one, and that's what we're focusing on since that's what's starting in a month. So who has to fast? Right. So the first one, I'll go ahead and just say that it's a Muslim. Muslim has to fast. Non-Muslim, non-Muslim does not have to fast. I mean, non-Muslim, all they're really supposed to do is become Muslim, and then once they become Muslim, they're supposed to do everything else a Muslim does. Okay? Meaning you can't force a non-Muslim to fast, and say, hey, this is what Allah said, like go and come and fast with us. Non-Muslim's gonna be like, you're crazy. So the second thing is to be sane, meaning um, basically not to be uh, insane, right? Is the opposite of insane, but not to be, you could say like a severe mental illness. Someone has a severe mental illness, then they don't have to fast. And it's not just like it's not like depression or something like that. I don't think that would be a valid excuse. It's more like, for example, people with Down syndrome, right, or people with maybe some certain levels of autism, right? Because someone with Down syndrome, they're uh, like I wouldn't say they're children because they're adults, but at the same time, they don't really completely know what's right from wrong. Sometimes they don't really know what they're doing. You can't be like strict on a person with Down syndrome and say, hey, you have to wake up and you have to go to work and you have to do this and that, because they're not fully sane. They have a severe mental illness, right? So they don't have to fast. You can't force that kind of person to fast. They're excused. They don't get any sin. Okay. Um, the next one is someone who is legal age, and the Arabic word is baligh. Baligh. Someone who's a legal age, meaning you can't force a kid to fast, right? Now, what do you mean by you can't force a kid to fast, right? So let's talk about prayer, right? A little kid who's like 3 or 4, even when they go and pray, they're not gonna stand still. They might not even face the qibla. A lot of times you'll see in the masjid or in your own home, little kid, 3 or 4 years old, they'll probably stand next to their parent praying, but they'll like either dance or they'll like fidget or they'll, sometimes when they go in sajda, they like completely lie down on the floor. They'll talk and they might be like chewing on something. So obviously you're not gonna tell them that you have to pray because they don't get any sin for praying. But the Prophet ﷺ did say that at the age of 7, parents should tell their kids to pray. From the age of 7, that means all 5 prayers, including Fajr. A 7-year-old should be waking up for Fajr. And it's like, you're like, wow, a 7-year-old waking up at 5 a.m., that's pretty harsh. Okay, you can tell them they don't have to pray. But then once they're, let's say, 13, 14, and they didn't make that habit of waking up that early every day for Fajr, it's going to be very tough. And once they are baligh, and baligh basically means that mm, they've gone through puberty, right? So all of you've gone to school, you've probably taken either health class or I forgot what the other in elementary school they have a term for it. So when you go through that class and you learn about the different um, changes in the human body that a kid goes through, and they go through post puberty, once they meaning after puberty, once they experience those changes, now they become baligh. So that it's different for everybody, but Usually you could say about like usually it's earlier for girls. It's probably like, by 10 or 11, and for boys it's probably like once they're a teenager or even like by 14, right? So once a person is that age, then they have to fast. And sometimes parents think, oh, my child is so young, my child's only like 13. Why, I'm not even gonna let them fast. Although we see there's so many young kids that they can fast. Now, if you're really worried about the kid's health, then don't force them. Um, I was going to mention something else. Yes, for praying. The Prophet ﷺ told the parents that at the age of 10, they should be even stricter. I mean, the hadith says that they can even technically hit the kid, and obviously in this country, whatever, you shouldn't, you should not, you should not hit kids. Basically, that's what I want to say. You should not hit kids, but according to the hadith, you should be really strict with kids once they reach the age of 10. Once they reach the age of 10, then they should be waking up for Fajr. They should be praying all five prayers so that by the age of, let's say, 12, 13, 14, whenever they're actually baligh, then now they have the habit and they can continue praying. Because if a parent doesn't, if a parent is not strict from an early age, and then the parent only becomes strict once a person becomes baligh at the age of 14, I mean, that person it's really tough at that age. If you tell them you don't have to pray until 14, now at 14, this person is just getting used to waking up for Fajr and praying all five times a day, even like praying Zohar during school or praying, Isha at late night. All five prayers, someone has to pray. Everyone has to pray, okay? And same thing for fasting. Once you're at the age, you have to fast.
At which age do we have to fast?
So it is different for everyone, but the main idea is that once they've gone through puberty, right? And for, you could say roughly around 12 to 14. It depends. It depends. The best thing I would recommend, if you guys can either ask your teachers or your kids, sorry, not your kids, your teachers or your parents, maybe you feel more comfortable with parents. There are certain, um, for example, just to be a little more clear, because we're learning fiqh class, um, if you start growing hair under your arms, right? Or for if you start growing facial hair, right, for boys, then that's like that. Those are signs that okay, now you're becoming an adult. You're going through puberty, so then you should start. You have to start fasting, right? But roughly around the age of 12 to 14, then you have to pray, you have to fast, you have to do all the acts of worship. Okay. There any more questions that you guys can email me for that? And let me just, I know it's almost 3 o'clock, so let's see, we have a question. The last one, the last requirement is someone who's healthy. So if someone is sick, then they don't have to fast. Now there's two types of sicknesses. There's one that's temporary and there's one that's, you could say, permanent or it's ongoing, right? Temporary means like you just have a flu, you just have a stomach flu or coronavirus or whatever, right? That's temporary. Another thing is like diabetes, or someone has, cancer. May Allah protect us from that. If someone has a very weak immune system, so that's something that's kind of permanent. So if someone has temporary sickness, then they're allowed to skip those fasts of Ramadan, but they're gonna have to make them up later. If someone is permanently sick, like for example, someone has diabetes, I mean, some people with diabetes, they can still fast. It's not that bad. And some people have really bad, like my grandfather, his diabetes is really bad that he can't go 15, 16 hours without fasting. It's very bad for his health. So for him, he can skip the fast, right? And he's not going to make them up, right? Because if he can't fast in Ramadan, he can't fast later either. Maybe in the winter months, people with diabetes might be able to fast, but sometimes even they can't fast just 12 hours. So for them, they'll have to pay a certain amount per every fast they miss, right? It's about $5 to $7 they have to pay for every single fast. So multiply, let's say, for example, if we're being on the safe side, $7 times 30 days Ramadan, that'll be about $210 for the whole month. So they don't have to fast, but they'll have to pay. We'll go through that ruling later. I just want to let you know that the main idea here is who has to fast? Someone who's Muslim, someone who's sane, right? They don't have any like severe mental illness. Someone who is baligh, they're at the right age, and someone who is healthy, meaning they don't have any sickness that's going to get in the way of fasting. Okay. There are, let's see, the next slides that I had prepared. When does Ramadan start? Oh, this is a very, I think this you guys would like these next slides, but we'll talk about it next week. Okay. Okay. Any questions? Are you guys still maybe a little confused about the baligh thing, about the legal age thing? Is anyone still a little confused on that? Or everyone kind of understood? You know what? I'll try to make a make a document so that I can send it to you guys and you guys can read in detail what it means to be baligh and what it means to be at the right age. Okay? I'll try to send that by like in a couple days, so then you guys can have that for your own reference. Okay. um, so please review all this information that you did. Hopefully you guys took notes. I'll send the slides to you guys so you guys can have that reference. Next week we'll start with a short 5-minute review in the beginning of class, right? Okay. So please try to come to class on time at 3. We'll start by 3:05 latest. Okay. If there's no other questions, then I'll see you guys next week. Take care. Assalamu alaikum. Sorry. 2 o'clock, not 3 o'clock. 2 o'clock.